Hello, beautiful souls. This is Diane Lang from Wisdom of the Akashics. Thank you very much for visiting the video today. Thank you for visiting the YouTube channel. You know, if you're interested in getting updates and being notified of the live Google Hangouts that I'm going to be doing in the near future, you'll want to subscribe below so you get notification of those. And again, thank you for the comments, the likes, the readings, the subscriptions, the testimonials, everything that everyone does to reach out and let me know that the information that they find here is of value. I want to follow up with some clarification on the video that I actually did yesterday about surrender, and it's in regards to the aspect about our twin not hurting us intentionally. What I want people to understand about that, it doesn't mean that the relationship with your twin won't experience some form of pain. It doesn't mean that they don't do things that upset us or that may be hurtful to us. I'm talking about pain in the sense of when it reaches a level of abuse, because that's actually something that I'm hearing quite a bit about, is that people are finding themselves in relationships that, or in a love relationship, a tangle, so to speak, with someone that they're thinking is their twin, but the relationship is abusive. And you know what? At any point that a relationship is abusive, that relationship is meant to be left behind. It is not self-loving in any way to stay in a relationship that is abusive. Your soul has not agreed to stay in a relationship that is abusive. You don't have a soul contract that agrees to being abused. And so if that's actually what is going on, then that's actually where we're getting asked, what they're really bringing us is an opportunity to step into true full self-love. Because when we love ourselves and we have enough self-worth, self-esteem, and self-love, we don't accept that level of behavior. So if that's something that's going on with you, you really have to look. That is when I'm really suggesting that you look in the mirror, because it's not about what another person does. It's about what we accept that another person does. And that's really self-awareness, self-love, and a commitment to not allow yourself to be in an abusive relationship. If there's a shared level of abuse, it's just toxic. You know, I don't care who you go to, what type of counseling you go to, where you seek to get help. But if you're in that relationship, you're struggling with it, you're having trouble leaving it, really reach out to someone. You know, most of our healthcare systems have some form of a support. I know here in Canada we can actually go to our doctors, but we have to be able to be open and honest with them. The one thing that I really want you to capture out of all this is that if we're sharing in that abuse, meaning a lot of abuse that goes on in a relationship is actually being brought forward from both parties. It's almost a tit for tat, you know, things that are wildly jealous, where there's inappropriate behavior, where there's physical abuse, where there's mental and emotional abuse. If somebody ever has to speak down to you to make themselves feel better, that's abuse. That's abuse at the finest level. No soul is meant to have to put up with that type of behavior. But we cannot stop it. We cannot expect them to be the one that changes. We have to be the one that steps into our self-worth, steps into our self-love, and say, this relationship is not serving me. It's toxic. I'm behaving toxic in it. They're toxic and I'm accepting that toxicity. That's where you really have to start to go inside. You know, and I want everybody to really embrace the truth that if that's the level of pain that you're talking about in a relationship, then, you know, I don't know, I'm not going to claim to know whether that is your twin or not, or that's somebody that you have a divine love relationship, but there's nothing divine or loving about abuse. And so that just means that even if that were that level of relationship, that means somebody is seriously off path. It could mean both of you are off path. The other thing about toxic relationships is they can actually be our greatest gift when we look inside and see that we are worthy of something higher and better. That we are worthy of stepping into a relationship. First of all, we are worthy of stepping away from the relationship. And if you leave one and bounce straight into another, it's just most likely going to be a rinse and a repeat. A rinse and repeat is I've left the person, but I haven't left the behaviors. I haven't left the patterns. I haven't left anything that's different. You just walk into another person that brings you all of the same lessons. There is a gift in certain things that we may not be able to initially see, but there can be a gift in it that it actually sends you into place of setting boundaries, finding some commitment to be self-loving enough to let yourself step out of that relationship and do so, and not be in pain and anger and hatred about the other person, because you're just carrying toxicity forward, which for one isn't going to bring us another healthy relationship. It just means we're going to be sitting in that pattern and withholding love. And when we're withholding love from ourselves, we're withholding love from other people. And if we're withholding love from other people, there's a reciprocal effect of withholding love from ourselves. And that's not how we heal. We heal in allowing ourselves to be loving, forgiving, kind, accepting. And sometimes it's simply that person is really off path. But that doesn't mean that we need to stay and help them fix their problems. You know, some people, it's like I have a lot of people that come to me many times over the years and, you know, talk about, my spouse is doing this. He's abusive when he drinks. He's a great guy when he's doing this, but he's horrible if he's, you know, add alcohol, for example. Well, if you're choosing, and actually this goes for girls too, because I know very many women that bring a lot of substances into their relationships too, and then wonder why they're not working, or use the excuse of the dissatisfaction in the relationship for the use of the substance. What I really want you guys to get out of all of that, that's all stuff that we have to look within for. If you're using behavior in a relationship as a reason to to take a substance, to take a substance, so you're on some sort of, you know, medication, you're struggling with depression, but you're not actually doing anything. You're just taking the medication, but nothing is changing in the dynamic of the relationship. Somebody has to change, and it's nobody else's responsibility to change our experience but ourselves. When people come to work with me, what I do is I help them step into conscious co-creation. I always call everything co-creation, because I believe that we are being always guided and supported by the universe. You know, if we have a desire for something wonderful in our lives, that means we're available. It's available to us. We don't get given desires and goals and dreams and you know, where we can think out of the box and see some really beautiful experience in our future if we're not meant to align with that. But we have to be the ones that step into the pattern of changing what we're bringing in, changing what we're vibrating with, so that we can change the outer experience and draw that to us. And you know, and there's really is a pattern of same old, same old. So if somebody's in a repetitive relationship where they just keep changing partners, but the overall dynamic is the same, that's actually an extremely big indication that the biggest issue that one needs to do is face that they look within. But you don't look within with the toxic feelings toward yourselves. You have to look in with love for yourself and recognize that this, say for example, toxic relationship, toxic experience is giving me an opportunity to step into self-love, because I love myself enough to step away from this toxicity. That's what the universe wants for you. The universe wants you to come into alignment with knowing that you are an amazing being and that you deserve a healthy, loving relationship. But those come not only in our commitment to draw them to us, but they come from a commitment to be accountable for our own behavior, our own choices, our own choice to either end a pattern, or if it continues, to recognize that I'm the common denominator in the relationships that keep happening. So, you know, it can be a different guy, a different girl that shows up. They look different. They're completely different, you know, experience and human being, but the underlying story doesn't change from relationship to relationship. And that's when you really have a big, you know, aha, and say, you know, what is it that's going on here? and just completely take your eyes off anything that's going on outside of you. One of the things that I like to guide people towards is finding a place where they can actually start to really find out who you are at a soul level. That's something that we get some information about in the Akashic Records, but it's really way bigger than that. It's like, who are you at a soul level? Who do you want to be? What experiences do you want to have while you're on the earth? Do you want to come up out of the pain and the muck and the mire and the disappointment and the anger and the frustration? Because if you do, and you genuinely do, first off, most of us don't get there by ourselves. I've had some dark nights of the soul in my lifetime, and there's been different times where I was in a lot of pain right from childhood on. But when I got into my late teens, I started to recognize that every time I kind of put something about, it was, putting it at it was my parents' behavior, it was the alcohol that was drank in our house and all of that. I realized I didn't feel in control of my own story at all, as long as I was reflecting everything outside of myself. I am far from perfect. Every experience that I have is an ongoing journey. It's like, am I growing from it? Am I handling it better than the last time this came up? Am I getting out of a relationship faster when I see that dysfunction? And those are all things that I can actually quite happily tell you. I've made some really impactful changes in my life, and I made them by being cognizant, by choosing to make some decisions about being accountable for my decisions, and then also by getting support. So whether it's you come to someone that's a life coach, spiritual life coach like myself, whether you go and you get some help from the your doctors, I just caution you to, if the only thing you're doing is reaching out for a pharmaceutical to try to make you feel better, really that does is just numbs us down. It numbs us down. It takes us into a place where maybe our emotional roller coaster isn't quite as high, but we're not getting to the information about what it is that we need to create a different experience so that we actually have happiness and joy on the earth. We're just being numbed out of the experience. So I'm not saying don't go get that support if you need that support, but also make sure that you're getting some spiritual guidance. Make sure that you're doing something, whether you're going to a Reiki practitioner, whether you're going to some self-help healing information, and if you just, for example, sometimes you have to start with just, say, reading a book that helps you become aware. But if that book has exercises in it for you to kind of develop that higher level of self-awareness, and where you can create some measuring sticks for yourself, and you read the book but you don't do any of the exercises, that's not full participation in making a change in your life. And I hope nobody thinks they're getting beat up by this information. I just want everybody to understand that change comes when we create and make a commitment to make the change within ourselves. As long as we're placing any of the energy outside of us, as long as we're putting the reflection out, we're projecting out to them, it's about them changing. It's about them stopping drinking. It's not about them stopping drinking. It's about you stepping away from a behavior until that change takes place. And I'll give you an example on a personal level. I had somebody in my life that had developed an addiction issue. And so I had said, I cannot stay in this relationship any longer. It's not healthy. It's hurting. It's becoming abusive. There's no trust left in it. So they wanted to be able to just go away and go into, say, well, I'm going to go off and do some self-help stuff and maybe go and, do some, for example, rehab. And then when I come out, I want to be able to come straight home. I didn't allow that experience to happen. I said, no, you don't get to come straight home, because 3 months doesn't tell me anything. 3 months just tells me that you made it through rehab, for example, if that's for the step that they're taking. And in my experience, it was like, no, you need to go and work on yourself. And nobody makes those changes for other people, and if they do, they're not long lasting. Somebody needs to go and stop that behavior, look within themselves, understand they're hurting people that they love through their addiction. But unless they see that and they want to make that change, when they try to do it for somebody else, those changes don't last. And so I said, go off, like find yourself, get healthy, reach out in 2 years and talk to me. Because that's how long I felt like I needed to set a boundary at a minimum for me to even look back at that relationship. And that relationship never came to fruition again, but we actually have developed a friendship because I did genuinely love him. And I wanted him to get healthy, but he needed to see on his own that his actions were creating his outcomes and results that he wasn't happy with. And he couldn't make that change for me. He had to make that change because he saw within himself that behavior, that addiction, that drinking, that use of the drugs was tunneling him down a hole. And it had nothing to do with me. It had to do with his own pain. And he needed people at a much higher level that I could help him with at that time. And this was a long time ago in my life. So I had this experience a long, long time ago, but it helped me set a boundary. And so ever since then, I've had a boundary about alcohol and drugs in my relationship. And it's a healthy boundary. And it's not that can be, if somebody wants to have drinks, it's not about that. It's about, is it at a level that changes their personality and then abuse becomes an outcome of that? If somebody wants to have a few beers on the weekend and go out socially and have some beers while we're drinking, and there's no real major behavioral changes, I don't have any comment about that whatsoever. I have drinks. If I want a glass of wine, I have a glass of wine. If I want to go out and have a few drinks and go dancing, I do. But alcohol has not impacted my relationships based on my use of the alcohol. And it's nobody's perfect. You might get a little bit too full one time and then you realize, well, I got a little loose with the lips last night. And so then, to me, that's to say, look, that means I can't do that because it's not fair to the other people. And it's up to me to be responsible for that, not for them. And so I hope that you can see that when we talk about the twin being hurting us, they can bring us to a place of desiring self-love and self-healing. That is my experience, and it's certainly the experience of many of the people that I work with and that come to me as clients. But if there is an actual abuse, if there's behavior that is completely tearing you down at a soul level, you do not have any sort of agreement or contract that you need to stay in that. This comes up a lot in the Akashic records, and it comes up a lot when I do energy work and healing work with people, when I do readings, and people share with me, well, this is what's going on. So we never talk about the other person after that. We talk about you. We talk about how you can come into a place of self-esteem and self-love enough to step away from that behavior, to say, I'm much more worthy of a healthier love from that. And if you're part of the behavior, then we're going to look at that, but we're not going to actually look at their behavior, their choices, their boundaries. We're going to look at yours. And that's where the growth comes, that's where the expansion comes, and then that's where positive change ends up impacting and taking place. Because when you walk away in a healthy version of loving yourself, you don't have to feel bad about that decision. You can be at peace with that decision. It's about serving your highest good. And when we serve our highest good in that regard, we set a very good example for people to follow, particularly children. Children that are watching abusive relationships and unloving relationships and unhealthy relationships and are part of watching a dynamic between their parents that are toxic, anybody who thinks it's in their highest good to stay together for their children while that is going on just simply isn't thinking clearly. And if you want to discuss that, feel free to reach out and discuss that with me, but I will stand true in that. I came from that and I understand completely. I have enough kids that come to me and talk to me about it, and where I actually have kids have talked to me and say, well, my parents don't love me, and I'd say, oh my God, why would you feel that? And they're so self-absorbed, they're so this, they're so that, they're so, they're so mean to each other, and we just have to take the brunt of it, and I got to stay in my room all the time because they're fighting, and yet they don't talk about actually parting. They don't talk about what could we do to make this relationship healthier for our children. It just means that they're stuck in a lower self-level behavior. It doesn't make it bad. It's not judgmental. It just means that you have to recognize, do you really from your heart think you're serving your children and your families in the highest sense when you accept and stay in an abusive relationship? So I just want to make sure that people understand that. I got some information about it when I got up this morning, and I got asked a question. You know, what does it mean that your tins would never hurt you? It doesn't mean that the dynamic isn't, there can't be levels of pain in the story, that, you know, that you feel painful that they're making a choice, that they're staying where they are, or that they're not calling back, or that they haven't spoke to you in a while. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about level of behavior that is abusive, that takes from the soul in any way where you are literally being you know, brought down by somebody else's need to keep themselves up. You know, if anybody needs you to be low so they can feel high, that's abuse. That is what abuse is. So God bless you, beautiful souls. I hope this helps clarify that. You can reach out to me at wisdomoftheakashics.com if you're interested in booking any readings or work with me. And as I've mentioned before, my Awakened Soul program, I do offer a free 30-minute consultation for that program. And that's for people that really want to step into who they are at a soul level and become fully soul expressed in their life, their relationships, their happiness, their joy, their bank accounts. You know, anybody that really wants to align with what it is we really came here for. So God bless. Wisdom of the Akashics, Diane Lang. Namaste.